do know we have some friends from the EC conference room. Do you mind sharing your names just so we can get that for the minutes, if that's okay?
Sure. This is the Habematol Pomo of Upper Lake Executive Council. So Sherry Treppa, Tracy Treppa, Kathleen Treppa, Carol Munoz, and then we've got a couple by Zoom, Jennifer Burnett and Veronica Crum.
Thank you so much for joining us today this morning.
And that is a nice looking room.
I know.
Yeah, I've talked in that room. The acoustics are good too.
We're gonna have to step up our game.
I know. The board chambers remodel. All right, we have
There he
Peter.
All right. Looks like we have everybody that's on the board here, or the committee here. So I'll go ahead and open the meeting up. We have a roll call here, so I'll just start with Bruno. Bruno Sabatier is here. Oh, there we go. Harry Lyons.
Yes, I'm here.
Marina Delagiani.
Here.
Oh, I always do a silent S. Is that proper?
Nope, that's how you pronounce it in the Greek language. So that's perfect.
See? And then Peter Windrum.
Here.
All right. And am I missing, is Scott DeLeon? Am I supposed to mention his name or is
he should be joining, but he's not officially on the committee.
okay?
Yeah.
Just making sure. It's either you or him, right?
Yeah.
That's how it usually works. Okay. So that's what
correct.
we got. All right. With that, are there any items not appearing on the posted agenda for discussion?
Nope.
This is Peter. I'd like to just offer a comment at the end of that is not a non-timed item.
Okay. All right. So I will cover that on 15. Okay.
Thank you.
Next, board action, the minutes for April 4th. Has everyone got a chance to read those? Does anybody need time?
I'm good to go.
All right. It looks like we do have someone from the public that's raising their hand. So if there's no other board members that have a question, I will open it up to public input. Betsy, if you can unmute.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I did have a question about the minutes. There was a mention of Supervisor Sabatier referred to eminent domain. And my understanding was that from the very beginning of all of this, from the congressional order, that eminent domain is not allowed. Could you please, make sure that's a correct, whatever it is that happens, please make sure this is understood clearly.
I can clarify that if you'd like, Chair.
Yes, please do so.
So the money that we receive from the state water resources cannot be used for eminent domain, but they're very aware that there will be some unwilling sellers. There's ways to negotiate to make them willing sellers, and there's the potential where eventually we do have to go into eminent domain, but we cannot utilize the resources provided by water resources from the state. Hopefully that clarifies for you.
Did that help, Betsy?
No,
No. Okay. So
you got to understand, that sounds like mumbo jumbo to me. That the state money is this and the federal money is that and that sort of thing. The public has been under the impression all this time that eminent domain will not be used to acquire these properties, regardless of where the money comes from. So, it's just something that it's always a kind of a threatening sort of a thing. And I just like to be really careful about using that term for people. It's in the minutes. It's something that you guys think is okay. I hear that. Thank you for explaining that.
okay.
And may I comment on that very quickly?
Yes, please.
Yeah, that statement was made by a citizen at a public meeting that was being held when considering the the water TMDL for Clear Lake. It is an incorrect statement. Absolutely, the district has the power to use eminent domain for the acquisition of properties. That's a misapprehension. It's incorrect. As Supervisor Sabatier pointed out, one cannot use the money from the state grant. That's a $15 million grant for eminent domain actions. It's only for willing sellers. But that is not a limitation in the federal government. And the reason is obvious. You cannot have a multi-million-dollar project with one property owner being a holdout and thereby stopping the entire project. So Betsy, that's an incorrect statement. Unfortunately, it was that citizen's comment was not corrected at that hearing, so it created that misunderstanding.
I thank you very much. That's very helpful.
Okay. Is there anything else, anyone from public comment that would like to? All right. If not, I'll bring it back to the board or the committee for action.
Move to approve the minutes as written.
Second.
Well, I have a motion to end a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
I
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. All right, motion carries. Next, we'll move on to item 4, updates and next steps with parcel acquisition. And so I'll go ahead and give the floor to Marina.
Thank you. So as a reminder, folks can access our parcel tracking map here on the Water Resources website. Let me go back and just to familiarize folks. So if you go on the Water Resources website, programs and projects, you scroll on down to our Middle Creek Restoration Project. You go to this lovely page, and then you're going to go for property acquisition. You can do the map here, and then all of this fun stuff, and you click around. We're trying to clean it up to make it as easily accessible as possible, but let me, now that I lost everything, it'll get you to our parcel tracking document, which hasn't changed from the last meeting. This is the Sino-American Buddhist Association. This is the property, so we need to change this right now to non-willing sellers. Again, we are collecting the list of non-willing sellers, which I will show here in our PowerPoint. Here are the APNs. So with the non-willing sellers list that we are getting, and I know that's on an agenda item, so let me go through where we're at with these parcels. I know this looks kind of funky monkey right now, but I figured just a regular spreadsheet would look easiest. So we have the APNs here, and then the names of the owner, and then we have the current status. So as you can see, there were a lot of appraisals that were sent to DWR for review on the 9th of last month, which is exciting. So that includes Chandler, Narvaez, and I apologize if I mispronounce any of these last names, Sealy, Rec, Luna Gaming, and then also Fries Mendoza. We did receive approval for that one. So right now, our consultants are preparing offer packages for Fries Mendoza and Sealy. That was the most recent update, which I don't have on here on this list. On 5/27/2022, our consultants spoke with Mr. Khan, and at this time, he informed us that he is not a willing seller. On 5/4, all of the parcels for Seychow were sent and are being reviewed by DWR right now. Same with Coker. On 1/18, again, our consultants made appraisal with Les Christensen, and he refused to allow entry for inspection, and he wants all coordination to go through Miss Whitfield, which is his sister. So we are in the process of obtaining communication with Miss Whitfield and going through that avenue. And then Vitsmedian Monument was unable to contact for appraisal inspection. So we at the county are trying to make contact with Vitsmedian. On 5/20/2022, our consultants spoke with Mr. Heron, and he informed that he is not a willing seller. And then with Wilkerson, again, Monument was unable to contact for appraisal inspection. So we at the county are trying to obtain contact with Wilkerson. Now, the folks that are outlined as non-willing sellers, again, I would like that written confirmation right now. Again, and working with DWR and possible next steps with that. But again, our focus is primarily on willing sellers. And right now, based off of the review time of the state in terms of reviewing these appraisal reports, we're looking at roughly 6 weeks, which we had anticipated. But again, we are working very closely with them. And once we get any of the appraisals from DWR, or from, our consultants, we are sending those directly to the state for review. And I see Daniela does have her hand up, so I'm going to let Daniela interject and add anything that I may have missed.
I was just gonna say Monument did send us an appraisal for Vets Median.
Okay, thank you.
We just hadn't updated that table yet.
All right, so with that being said, are there any questions from any of the board members? And I see,
Supervisor Sabatier?
Yeah, quickly, I'm counting the APNs that are on this list. How many APNs are still going through the process? Is this all of them? Because I don't think we had 22 left.
no, so these are the ones that we are actively working on. There are still some, again, we're waiting for conversations to have before we move forward with those. I know there's some with the the San Joaquin district, some state and then other county parcels as well. They're working with, but these are the ones that we are actively moving along with, and that we have either appraisals in hand or that we have had most recent conversations, for example, with Mr. Khan or Mr. Heron, who said they are no longer willing at this point.
And I forget what we said last time. We kind of made a unofficial kind of deadline in hopes to be done with all of our appraisals. Was that July 1st? Was that September 1st? Do you remember what that was?
I want to say it was August,
Okay.
and we're still meeting that timeline.
Okay, you think that we're still on track for that? Okay, and I get it that it's up to, when the ball is in the state's court, that we kind of are on a holding pattern for that, for them to take action. I'm a little concerned that so many of the ones submitted on March 9th have not quite returned to us. Has there been some back and forth to have some changes or some fixes, amendments?
No, so knock on wood, crossing my fingers, every appraisal that we've sent to the state, they have approved. So we haven't gotten anything. Again, what they do is we send it to our grant manager, and then they send it to their real estate office, and their real estate office does an entire inspection and a report that they get back to us, basically saying that they agree with the appraisal at hand. So every single appraisal that we've received, we have not gotten any pushback, and they've approved. Again, we do have really good communication with the state. So I anticipate, and that's one thing that I've talked with our project manager on, if you get any input on any possible kickback, please let us know right away so we can keep that on our radar and we can be well versed. So it's just, they review, and I know, they have a lot on their plate as well. They send us an entire inspection report from their real estate office.
Okay. And then just again, to reiterate, I know you said that you feel you're on target for meeting that goal of August 1st. That includes the other APNs that are not on this list at this moment in time.
Depends. I don't want to speak on behalf of those, because again, I know we have conversations. We have a conversation later today, which we'll be speaking about that. I don't want to loop, for example, those APNs in there, because there's still conversations that need to have. Or also, for example, if we are not able to get a hold of Wilkinson or Whitfield or what have you not, and they say that they're not willing, then that can entirely change those parcels. But we have biweekly meetings with with Monument. And even in between those biweekly meetings, we are in close correspondence with them. And again, I told them if they see any sort of hesitancy or pushback, or, something changes drastically, then they need to let us know right away.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from committee members?
Don't see any. I'm not seeing any hands, except for in the Zoom room for public comments. So, Mary Jo Velasquez, if you can unmute, I think you're still muted. There we go.
Seems to be a delay here. I got really excited when I got Danielle's email with all the update stuff, and then it's all parcel numbers, and I can't find any publicly available map that has parcel numbers on it. So that update is kind of useless. Sorry, but it can you, I mean, parcel numbers can't be confidential information. It would be
Yes.
really helpful if your update, if the map you have on the website had parcel numbers on it.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Daniela.
And I agree, we will get those parcel numbers on that map, because unless you're looking at that map every day, it's not gonna make sense, right? Of which parcel is owned by
I
who.
have no idea. It
Yes.
And
could be on the
Daniela,
moon. It could be on the moon for all I know.
Daniela just provided a link to our GIS system where you can look up properties either by address or APN number. And so you'd be able to look up those properties through our GIS as well.
It's, yeah, okay, that would be like 5 steps for each property. It would just be really nice to have that.
I'll add the numbers. I'll add the APN numbers to the map. That's fine.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm not sure if they're on that I can just type them in commonly. That's one of the things, but I do understand that some folks would like to see it on there. Sometimes one thing that I've noticed is in some of our committees and I have town halls that have very similar requests. And sometimes we get into these discussions, and sometimes we're walking the line of giving out too much information for the public. So if that extra step could help, just typing into that GS system with the list, print off the list and type it in. I don't know. Sometimes that's what I have the same situation when it comes to people wanting to know exactly where cameras are, what we did in a specific roadmap or something. And it's like, okay, these are public meetings. And of course, we need to notify the public, but at the same time, people that want to do wrong have the same access. And so I only highlight that. I'm not trying to discourage anything. I just want people to be aware of that. So
Can I comment just very quickly? If one goes to the GIS site, that portal, you can open up a map of this whole region, and you ask, there's a place over there where you can have various levels of overlays. And one of them is to show parcel numbers. So you can look at a single map and it shows every parcel number that you're looking at in the region. And so doing that, you're not having to go through multiple steps. You can very quickly look at these numbers and identify the parcel that's being referenced. So it's very simple. It's on the GIS maps, and bring them up and click the parcel map overlay and you'll see them all.
If that's so easy, then why can't it be available from the Middle Creek Restoration website?
Well, well, I'm not arguing that, but I'm just pointing, just want to be clarified that you don't have to go down through each individual parcel in order to try to see where it is. That's all.
okay.
And just to confirm, and we will have those parcel numbers on our actual Middle Creek map.
Thank you
So
very
when
much.
folks, go directly to the website and click on that map, they can access that.
Thank
you. All right. Anything else on this that you need to discuss, Marina?
Nope. Do folks find this format easier, especially as we were just getting movement on appraisals and the status of outlining it here on this table? Is that okay?
I'm fine with this. I appreciate just having the conversation. One of the things that I'm kind of curious about is we had the split between Paragon and Monument. How far along are we with completing everything that Paragon has had on their list for, gosh, 2 years, 3 years?
Yeah, so with the sellers, we're just doing cleanup now. So for example, we just got the actual grant deed for Oldham. And then we also are just finishing the lease agreement for Ortega. So we're just doing cleanup now. The majority of our
they're done with all of their properties.
Yeah, for the
Okay.
willing sellers, yeah. And now all of our focus now has been on monuments since they have the bulk of it. So just a little switcheroo.
I just wanted to kind of get some conclusion or closure with what are we doing with what contract to make sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. 4.2, did you already cover some of that? I heard some of that, non-willing sellers, so.
Yeah, again, as we're going through, and this is just to elaborate again what I spoke on a little bit ago. I'm working on a document to send, so similar to how we sent out the willing sellers list, I will be sending out a non-willing sellers list. So just getting confirmation, written confirmation from those parcel owners. Also giving them another opportunity if they were possibly, you know, money might make them want to be willing sellers, but I don't want to give the direction of our contractor or consultants to write an appraisal report for someone who's a non-willing seller. Now, if someone were to write on that non-willing seller list, yes, I'd still be interested in seeing, you know, doing an inspection and appraisal report, but at this time I'm not willing. Then that way we can go still do the appraisal report, send it over to them in hopes that we can have some negotiations. I'm just hesitant since we are on such a timeline. I don't want our consultants to go out and do appraisal reports for folks that are absolutely not willing. So for example, you know, we have verbal confirmation from Mr. Khan and Mr. Heron that they're not willing, but I would like that written confirmation too. And that's something that we on the county are doing, are just sending out those, we'll be sending out those letters to those parcel owners, the remaining sellers. Supervisor Sabatier.
Yeah, just a quick question. Since we just stated earlier, and it's in our contract with the state that the money's not to be utilized for non-willing sellers, do we end up having to flip the bill if we appraise a property and they say they're not willing to sell, or are we still able to utilize those resources for the appraisal because we didn't know that they were not a willing seller?
Yeah, and that's exactly why I want to do that. So if they're not willing, then that way I can give, you know, we can say we're absolutely not going to be doing an appraisal for them, or, you know, possibly willing seller. That's what I want to confirm with the state is they may be willing if they see the appraisal report. Would we still get reimbursed? Because I don't want us to eat the change for that. So that's why I want that written statement of whether they may be willing or not. And I just need to get the thumbs up from DWR, which I don't anticipate that would be a concern. If they are possibly a willing seller and the appraisal report might make them be a willing, I see that as, you know, something that we can utilize these funds for.
Sometimes just the offer makes them
Yes,
willing.
Exactly. So I'm hoping.
I had no idea my property was valued at this.
Yeah.
May I ask a question for clarification on that score? If let's just say hypothetically, you initiate an eminent domain proceeding, which involves filing a lawsuit, doing the appraisal, and then making the offer, it being turned down, and filing the lawsuit. If at that point, the property owner says, I'll go ahead and sell it, does that make them at that point a willing seller that for which funds can be used? Can we get clarification on when it is that they could be, as I say, be classified under those circumstances as a willing seller? Because at that point, in point of fact, they are, even though you've gone through those procedures. And I think that's pretty important. And as we'll comment later, I think the Buddhist property is a perfect example of something like that.
The only thing we'd have to be careful is when our funds expire. So I know there's sunsetting funds, so we may not have the funds available if we get to that point or when we get to that point.
Well, I understand that, but I think there's really, really important that we get clarification and understanding, because if we are at that deadline where we have to consider that, then I'm going to suggest that as at least to the Buddhist property, which is far and away the highest priority of all properties that have not been acquired, that an eminent domain proceeding be initiated immediately, because I think there's a pretty good chance that once that were done, and it's a simple process, by the way, it's not complicated, that once that were done, that might cause them to flip to become willing at that point. So that makes, I think, crucial the idea that we clarify that can one initially not willing in the course of that process, if they decide that, yes, we'll throw in our chips and go ahead and sell it to you. Does that make them willing, and such as state funds are available? I think that needs clarification. And if that's the case, then we can establish priorities as to which ones you want to initiate eminent domain proceedings on. And I'm kind of jumping ahead, I suppose. I don't know where this is, but unquestionably, in my mind, you have to fill that huge blue spot. Has got to be acquisition, and you don't have to go through the whole, anyway. That's my point, and I think we need clarification there.
And I'll add on to that. I think that this is why we've kind of brought the discussion of eminent domain in the past, because it has to be started at one point sooner than later. If we have a list of unwilling sellers, not sure what the process will be, and maybe for next meeting, that's where the process can be elaborated on and finalized on negotiations to try and figure out how we can get them to become willing sellers. And then at what point do we start the process of eminent domain? But we do need to start it for those that are not willing sellers at a time that is sooner than later, because just like Peter mentioned, if they do change their mind, then at least we still have the funds available to be able to utilize the water resource grant.
Can I go one step further and say, I would suggest that this, because of these time constraints, that this committee recommend now that to the Board of Supervisors, because it's the board who has to prove the initiation of the eminent domain proceedings, that the committee today take action to recommend to the board that eminent domain proceedings be initiated forthwith as to the Buddhist property. And that would be true whether or not we're under these conditions. But because time is of the essence, that would be my suggestion.
My only argument that I would make against that for the timing is I want to make sure we finish this list for getting all of the appraisals done and submitted over to the state first, before we start adding more on top of that. And so I would suggest that our August meeting is when we make that final decision. And that's not taking too much time. I know it's more time, but that would be my argument against the time frame. But I agree with you that we do need to make it happen sooner than later.
Thank you.
And I would agree off of that, Supervisor Spatier, because especially we didn't have it on the agenda of board taking motion for that action. So per the Brown Act, we would have to have that on the posted agenda, so the community is aware that that's what's going to be discussed. So we can add that for the August Middle Creek meeting.
At that point, I hope that because we should be done with all the appraisals, that we'll have a very specific list as to what kind of properties and what kind of amount of work this is looking to be for any other process in order to obtain those properties.
Okay. I don't see any other comments. I'm not seeing any hands up, so we will move on to our next item. Bloody Island. So if there's an update on that, I know we had met. We met briefly, right, Supervisor Spatier, about something like this.
I don't know if it was before our last meeting or after our last meeting, but we did meet with Deputy Director Delegianis and Director De Leon just to kind of
That's right. That was before
our pathway, and those meetings are going to occur today.
Yeah, some of them. Yep. So yeah, we did meet prior to the last meeting is when it was, and one of our first meetings will be today, and then hopefully with the Robinson, that'll be in the future too. I know we'll be meeting with the Executive Council today, one after this meeting. So to talk about it, not just this, but there's other things they wanted to talk to the county about, but this being one of the other discussions as well. So any questions?
Looking forward to the conversation.
All right. Department of Water Resources. Marina?
Yeah, so again, we're still in close communications with DWR. It seems like our grant manager has a better understanding as you know than previously for the project at hand, and she's been very communicative with us, and then also just with our accountant team as well, making sure that we are getting them everything that they require. You know, they require projections so they can plan how much they're going to be spending for this project in general. So recently sent that to them, and then just again, any appraisal report or any communication. If we have any questions on the grant management aspect of it, they pick up and they communicate. So right now things are still smooth sailing with DWR. And that's all I have.
Okay. Are there any questions, comments from the committee? Anyone from the public? All right. Project area property maintenance. And this
Yes,
is
so I
Go
will
ahead.
let Daniela, if you have anything that you want to add on here.
No, the only updates I have are that I will be working with Robinson and Corolla to coordinate a coastal cleanup day out at the Middle Creek project area and Robinson territory. So they're gonna help us out. And that's all I have.
Oh, good. So the Robinson's helping the maintenance department or something like that, or is it the EPA? department?
Corolla EPA crew will be
Oh,
helping.
okay. Nice. All right. Supervisor Sabatier, did you raise your hand?
I have a stupid question. We own some of those properties out there, and we know the historic significance of the area, which is why we're working so hard to restore the old area. Is there something we can do to kind of enhance the potential penalties on those properties that we own? I don't think we could do that necessarily on the private properties, but as we continue to acquire properties, can we add them to like a preserve area? I don't know, just trying to figure out, because I'm looking for the day when Daniela tells me we caught somebody. I mean, I'm hoping that day comes true. But at the same time, a $100 fine just does not seem to equate to making change where we're still not just continuously trying to clean up people's ridiculous actions.
I think they already get like the conservation easements on there, but I think coordinating with other agencies like Fish and Wildlife, who could slap on even more fines, or the State Water Resources Control Board can slap on more fines, but it's just the manner of like catching them and going through that whole process.
Yeah, well, I would suggest on the side, not just Middle Creek Restoration, but if there's resources that you need to be able to catch those people, please approach us.
Okay. We have one camera set up and we're testing it in areas to see where we can be getting people on there. So
Awesome.
that's going.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. See what we got. Not seeing any other hands up. Anyone from the public? All right, we will move on to the Army Corps update.
Yeah, there's two developments. Both involve $750,000 in interest on the Congress and moving forward. The first was the request from Representative Thompson for ideas on earmarks, and Marina Delianis came up with the idea of about $750,000 for the work that PG&E would request, that is the power towers. And I also came up with something that wouldn't require the federal government to give money to PG&E, and it was the completion of the feasibility stage of this project. And I wanted to review what the feasibility studies are still required. It would be about $750,000, and the Corps was willing to go out on the limb and state that it would take about a year or a year and a half to finish this stuff off. Updating an environmental compliance documentation for NEPA, supplemental environmental impact statement, and finishing that off. Coordinating with resource agencies, fisheries, and for amending biological assessments, updating the cultural compliance document, which requires resuming State Historical Preservation Office consultation, tribal consultation, and updating Section 106 to get the NEPA documents, the National Environmental Policy Act requirements done. And lastly, finalizing and signing an updated programmatic agreement, which coordinates all this. So that's what Marina suggested, some idea for an earmark, and I suggested some idea for an earmark. We haven't heard anything more about that. The other item that I wanted to report on was a data check from the Army Corps. They called us up and they said, do you still have $800,000 set aside for the planning portion of the project? And so I quickly called Supervisor Bruno Sabatier, and I want to thank him again for running around and finding out and assuring that we did have that money available. And I was able to tell our Army Corps program manager, Dylan Van Dyne, that we have affirmed that the district, the non-federal sponsor for Middle Creek project, has been allocated $800,000 for the restoration project's pre-construction, engineering, and design. So we're talking about before, the earmark was for finishing the feasibility stage. This is for restoration projects, pre-construction, engineering, and design, which is in a way a further along in this whole thing. So I was able to confirm that data check with them. So there's two things going on. One is an earmark for an earlier step in the process, and the other is a possible congressional action on the planning and the design of the project. And haven't heard anything back from this either from the Corps. But the Corps is awake. They're checking to see if we have the money. So that's good news.
Thank you for that, Harry. Go ahead, Bruno.
Yeah, I will check in with CAO Susan Parker, but I believe last I heard is that the earmark was doing well and was being pushed forward, that nothing had blocked it or given us any negative connotation that it wasn't going to be approved. And so at this moment in time, everything looked really positive. And while I could wait for item number 10, I'll just say I did speak to PG&E and let them know that we might be calling them sooner than later, because if there's those funds made available, we need them to get started right away. So they know what we're trying to get accomplished, and they know that some wheels are turning out there.
So did they snap at Marina's lure, or were they also thinking about what I threw in the water?
I don't know which specific one they're moving forward with, but I've been told by Susan Parker that everything that we submitted for Thompson's request for earmarks is moving forward. So I will double check again.
So it's good we threw them too. Let's see.
Absolutely.
Well, and I do have an update on that. I think it's on item 11.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So with that, we'll if there are any other questions or comments for the Army Corps?
I want to say that I was really amazed that Dylan Van Dyne, he, like Supervisor Sabatier, he came across when I asked for help, and he came up with this estimate. You know, it took him 20 minutes. He called back and he said, "Yeah, we're talking $750,000, and we're talking a year and a half. Go ahead, call your congressman." So every once in a while, I know this from personal experience, every once in a while, the Army can move.
Yeah.
We're not moving mountains, we're moving armies.
All right. So I don't see any hands up from the public, so I'll move on to item 9, PG&E.
Or item 10, I'm not sure.
Well, I know what happened. Sorry, item 10.
I gave the update of anything that I have, but that's all I have. Unless somebody has more.
No, I don't think so. Is there any questions or comments on that one? All right, the next item, legislative.
It all flows so nicely, huh?
Yeah.
So going off of what we talked about the last two items, Susan Parker, CAO Parker, has been hard at work, and this was actually before she transitioned to CAO. So definitely want to thank her efforts, and then Dr. Lyons and Peter Windrum, of course, Supervisor Crandall and Supervisor Sabatier. We were able to pull two projects together. One was the funding for the relocation of the power lines. That was going to be a boots on the ground. And then the second one was for the feasibility. Unfortunately, they did not bite at my line of the power lines, but my name's not Marina for nothing. I'm going to try again, actively seeking funding to get the funding for that. But they did move forward, Congressman Mike Thompson, of moving forward the feasibility project, which is exciting because that's the biggest step that we have, right? That's the first step that we need to take and get that funding. So if you, I will also have this on the minutes and on the Water Resources website, but here we can click and go to Congressman Mike Thompson's page. And you can see this was for funding through the community project funding. He was able to submit X amount of projects to the Office of DC for funding opportunities. And he did select our Middle Creek project, which you scroll down here is Subcommittee on Energy and Water Development and Water and Related Agencies. So he requested $450,000 for Lake County to restart an authorized Corps of Engineers project, Middle Creek, California, to reduce flood and catastrophic loss, improve water quality, and restore vital wetland habitats with cultural significance for the surrounding tribal communities. So once we get next steps on this, we will decide what we have to do. But that was really exciting that they were actually able to submit these two projects, and Congressman Mike Thompson selected one of our projects, which is again, one of our biggest projects, our Middle Creek project feasibility study, to move forward for recommendation of funding. So I haven't heard anything yet, but CAO Parker has been in great communication with my office in terms of if we hear anything or what the status of this is. So right when I hear anything, if I hear anything before our next meeting, I will be sure to reach out to the listserv and of course the committee on next steps with that. But exciting news for that. So that's what I have with that. And I will let Dr. Lyons or any other committee members elaborate a little bit more or yeah.
Good.
Peter, I don't see you. Do you have anything? I didn't. Okay. I see that Mary Jo, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just a little confused. Marina used the word moving power lines, and I thought that the decision was that it's a lot less expensive to just improve the power lines, which is what I thought Harry was asking for the feasibility money. So is the plan to try to move them to keep them along 20, or is the plan to go through the middle, or to do a feasibility of which one should be done? Just want clarity.
Yes, so with that, we have to pay money for them to even do the redesign. So it wouldn't be until Army Corps, or excuse me, PG&E would do the redesign. And I think that's, I'm always gonna get this wrong. Is it 1,000, 1,000,000? There's a one in there, to actually do the redesign of
100,000 each.
Thank you. 100,000 each for the relocation. That is my understanding, is that they would be relocating the power lines out of the wetland area, but they would have to do the entire redesign before they do the actual relocation.
Okay.
Yes.
I like relocation much better. I'm glad
Yes.
to hear that that's the direction they're going.
Yes.
You're excellent. Thanks.
And I see Peter popping. Are you popping your hand up?
Just very quickly, there are two power lines. That's the issue. One of them definitely has to be moved out of the project area entirely, and the which is the smaller line, if you will.
Distribution line.
And then the huge towers, the idea is to upgrade those so they can continue to at least ways initially in the project, which PG&E agreed to, was upgrading those so they can withstand flooding. The other power line has to be relocated.
Thank you, Peter.
All right. Any other comments? Harry, you did raise your hand for a second. but then-
Yeah, I wanted to help Mary Jo with this. The feasibility, that word refers to an earlier step in the project. It has nothing really to do with PG&E. So you got two things: PG&E dealing with the wires, and then this feasibility study is finishing up the material that would get us to record of decision. So it's not the feasibility that the congressman is trying to move forward is a big general primary fundamental step in the entire project.
So the feasibility is with the Army Corps, not PG&E.
Right, that's
Okay.
what the congressman is he's currently working on.
So the 450,000 is for the feasibility with the Army Corps.
Right,
Okay.
to get the project updated from 20-year-old documents that
Okay.
need to be updated.
Great. Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions, comments? All right, that's good work. I'm glad that we were able to collaborate on that. And so we will move on to the next item, which is project funding.
I don't have any updates. Again, still working with our 15 million, and fingers crossed we get that approved funding from Congressman Mike Thompson's office.
All right. Any other questions or comments? All right. Caltrans.
I've had no correspondence or updates regarding Caltrans.
My next meeting with Caltrans is Thursday at 11. So if there's anything anybody wants me to bring up, I will send me an email and I'll bring those up and bring them back to you for the next meeting.
And I think that just our last status was, again, until we get the Army Corps moving, it's difficult to get Caltrans moving without any detail of what their scope of work is going to be.
All right. All right, any other questions? Okay. Public expression, and Peter did say, but I think he meant non-timed items. But if I'll just leave it open. Is there anybody that has anything for public expression? All right. I'll close that and move on to non-timed items. And I think this is where we address the open seat, I think. And I think.
Yeah,
If
let's
sorry.
gonna have Peter, go ahead. You can do your
Just one, and not because this is my last opportunity to speak on this subject, and I preface it, what I'm about to say, by saying that I have not conferred with anybody, any staff member or anyone else other than Harry and I and other folks in the coalition have talked about it, but it's my idea. And that is specifically as it relates to the management of the Water Resources Department. Initially, the department was a standalone and there was a director of the department. And then over passage of time, the oversight of it moved to the Public Works Department. I'm suggesting and recommending and asking perhaps that the Board of Supervisors review that organizational structure and once again make Water Resources standalone so that there's a department director for Water Resources that answers directly to the Board of Supervisors and is not in any of the jurisdiction of Public Works. And the reason for that is that since it was passed, if you will, to Public Works, there have been enormous issues that have come up that are now Water Resources related and not issues of Public Works in any respect. To be specific, of course, this project, the Middle Creek project, is I see nothing more, but it's a project that is a water resources project. The Big Valley Groundwater Sustainability Plan, an enormous undertaking, is a water resources issue exclusively and will require an enormous amount of additional work and needs to be done so by people who are especially knowledgeable, which fortunately Marina has been and is, but people in that category. The third one that is uniquely water resources has to do with the potential listing of the hitch as an endangered species under the U.S. government. As you may recall, there was an application back in 2014 apply that to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife that Hitch be listed as an endangered species. In the last 3 months of the prior administration, there was a determination at that time that it was not an endangered species and not entitled to listing. A lawsuit was filed, and as part of that lawsuit is an initial settlement. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is in a process of a 1-year review of that earlier decision. It's highly likely that, in my estimation, and I think others, because of changes in the Hitch population since that initial determination, that it will be listed. That will have a profound effect on 3 hugely significant constituencies in this county, potentially profound effect. Those are agriculture, sport fishing, and the tribes. And that's going to be a mammoth undertaking, because under the federal system, unlike the state, there have to be plans developed and steps undertaken to try to restore the population. We've already, in connection with the Big Valley, which is sustainability plan, that is the #1 issue. The role that the county plays and that this department plays is fundamentally the mediator between these competing interests, potentially competing, and a huge job to try to bring these elements to work together and not be in simply an adversarial standing with one another. Again, water resources, resolving huge differences, dealing with constituencies, nothing to do with public works at all. And so these 3 come on top of everything that water resources has done historically. So my request is that the board take time to review the structure and administration of Water Resources Department, commit to it to added resources because they need it. It's very lightly staffed and phenomenal how much work has been done. But anyway, that's all. That's my message for Supervisor Sabatier and Crandall, because I think it warrants reconsideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. Looks like we have a hand up from Betsy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, Mr. Windrum, I'd like to add a 4th very large and important reason for separating Department of Water Resources, and that is the water quality order from the U.S. EPA to the state to restore the beneficial uses of the lake. We call it the stormwater program, but it is massively important to us. And I'd like to just throw that out there as a suggestion to include that, please.
Very well. And I just commented, I missed a time, but the drought in and of itself raises enormous issues for the county to address. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. And so I see that we have discussion on, did anyone want to have any comments for that or anything? Any statements or any of those? I'm not seeing any hands up. So what I'll do is discussion on vacant Middle Creek Project Committee seat.
As you may know, this is my last meeting for personal reasons having nothing to do with this committee. I love this committee and this project. It's been a passion for a very long time. This is a phenomenal committee. I think it's probably the best one in county government. And so anyway, that's all. It's been a labor of love, and thank you very much. And so that's all I have to say.
Supervisor Sabatier.
Oh, first, I appreciate Peter kind of cajoling me and EJ to decide to do something more than just listen to the fact that there is this project going on and actually jump in with both feet and making sure that we're a part of moving the project forward and hence creating this committee in the first place. Don't know that we would be here if it wasn't for you and Dr. Lyons. So appreciate that initiation already. Appreciate the work that you've done and the level of detail you already have and the knowledge you have. Obviously, you've been involved in this for a very long time, and I don't feel like you're not going to be involved in the future, just not as a committee member. I appreciate your time on the committee. My suggestion is that next week on the 12th of June is we bring it to the board to make sure that it's known publicly that we are putting out an application. And making sure that we collect applications for 2 weeks and then bring that back to the board again for approval so that by August, we can make sure that we have somebody already appointed to fill the seat so that we can have a full committee coming back in August to meet.
I like that. Any other comments, concerns on that?
I wanted to just thank Peter for all your help and assistance, especially since I've onboarded with the county. You've been of great help with me and getting me familiarized with this project and the importance of not only this project, but the hitch and everything else. Whenever I call you, you're there. So thank you so much. I'll keep bugging you. You can't get away from me that easily.
Thank you, Marina. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, Peter, thanks again. I always have I don't know if that one movie where he has like an implanted thing in his brain. So I always think, what Peter think or say on this? So I remember that thoroughly now. So
Yeah. Thank you, EJ. Thank you very much.
No, and we know that your goal is the whole project to come to a final where it was intended to go. We know that that was your passion. We know that that's the goal here, and it does need to happen. So.
Thank you.
As long as I'm on, I'll do what I can to push, and I know Supervisor Sabati feels the same way. So I like the plan that Bruno you laid out. I'd like to do that, and we'll go from there to appoint a new person. So with that, if there's nothing else, I'll close this item and move on to the next, which would be the August 1st meeting, right? And I appreciate all of those videos up, by the way. It's awesome.
And we also have the slides and the recordings. And since, again, we're doing bi-monthly meetings now, we'll make sure all the draft minutes, Kelly Reese, our secretary, does an awesome job of writing up the minutes. We'll make sure those are up there before the next meeting. So by the end of this month, so folks can look at that. Same with the slides and the recording. So if you guys have any questions prior, then that way folks can familiarize themselves before the next meeting.
I missed something. Mary, I'll get right to you after I announce this because it's important. I didn't get a response, but the Saba. I thought I had a connection through my cousin who works with the Buddhists, but he works with a different group. It's not Saba. So I did have him look into that, and he doesn't know that group of Buddhists. So I tried. So Mary Jo, sorry, I wanted to go ahead and give you your opportunity.
Somehow my clicker doesn't work very quickly. Last time we talked about having some sort of spreadsheet available to the public as well. And it looks like the new one Marina's just developed would be ideal. So it would be really nice if that could be posted as well.
Yeah, and we'll have that under the attachments once we make the modifications of the Vetsminian APN, saying that we did get that appraisal, then we'll make that update and then we'll add that all on there on the website too. We can get that done by the end of the week.
Great, thanks.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And if any of the community members, as you guys are scrolling on our website, we're not married to the format by any means. If you guys have any ideas or recommendations or ways to make it easier for you guys to access things, please feel free just to send us an email at water.resource@lakecountyca.gov. Kelly does an awesome job. She's relatively new, but she's picked up very quickly and we can make those modifications. We want to make sure that it's as easily accessible, this information to the community as possible. So feel free to send us any recommendations or give us a call. whatever's easiest.
All right. Supervisor Sabatier?
Yeah, just sorry to kind of ask this on a random order of operations here, but just checking in, I realized that I don't think we got an email in May providing us a email update just how, on what was going on. Just want to make sure that we are getting those interim months that
Yes.
we're not meeting, that we are getting an update, whether it's a no update or just here's an updated spreadsheet or something like that, just so that we can continue to track and see how things are going. So if we need to have some conversations, we can start there rather than waiting the whole 2 months.
Yes. And we'll make sure we sent that. I sent that with this most recent information. I should have sent a note update because there wasn't much movement until middle to the end of the month, as you saw on the appraisals. So I can do that at the beginning of each month, and I'll work with our consultants. They send me their tracker on, I think it's the last Friday before the first of the month. So I'll work with them in getting that in time. So whatever update we have, we can send that.
Perfect.
All right. All right, so any other, I don't, Danielle, do you have a hand up?
No, I don't think so.
It looks like a hand, I don't know. Anyhow, with that, it looks like we're at the end of our agenda. So do we just adjourn, right? I'm in so many different committees, I don't know if I have to motion it, if we have to motion it or not.
That's your job by your chair.
I'll just adjourn it. How about that?
Thank you
All
so
right, thank
much,
you, everybody.
everyone. And thank you so much, Peter. We hope
Thank you, Peter.
Thank
Peter.
you.
Now.
Gracias,
very much.
hermano.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good day, everybody.
Thanks.
All right.